Today, we're exploring what is honestly one of the most profound historical transformations ever recorded in human history. We're going to examine traditional accounts and historical sources detailing the life of the Prophet Muhammad. We'll trace the intense trials he faced and look at how those exact challenges literally reshaped the Arabian Peninsula from a completely fractured society into a unified civilization. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this by stepping back in time for a second. Imagine the 4th century. What actually happens to a society when humanity's moral compass is just entirely lost? Well, according to the historical texts we're looking at, this was a world entirely engulfed in darkness. It was an era defined by a complete breakdown of human rights and basic societal morality.
Section 1. The Era of Ignorance. This period is famously referred to in the sources as Jahiliyyah, or the Era of Ignorance. While powerful empires like Rome and Iran were out preying on the weak, the Arabian Peninsula itself was somewhat isolated. It was fractured and consumed by systemic oppression and constant tribal warfare. And our sources present this fascinating yet pretty grim paradox about the society. On one hand, you had unimaginable cruelties. The texts recount practices like burying infant daughters alive just out of societal shame. Widows were subjected to extreme isolation, forced to live in a dark room for an entire year without even water to wash or clean clothes. But then, juxtaposed against this severe mistreatment, the Arabs had these fierce redeeming traits too. They were legendary for their hospitality to strangers, and their fierce independence meant they had never actually been fully subjugated by any foreign empire. So they were really a people of extreme contrasts.
Section 2. A stand for justice.
It's right in the middle of this turbulent environment that the historical narrative introduces us to the Prophet's early life. Long before his claim to prophethood, at just 20 years old, an event happened that really set the stage for his lifelong pursuit of equity. The sources recount the story of a traveling merchant from the tribe of Zubayd. He arrived in Mecca to trade, and he brought his daughter with him. However, a wealthy, powerful, and corrupt local leader named Al-As bin Wa'il decided he wanted the merchant's goods, and his daughter. Using his sheer power and influence, he simply took them by force, leaving the poor merchant entirely destitute. Desperate and stripped of absolutely everything, the merchant ran to the Kaaba, which was the very center of Meccan society. Grabbing its covering, he cried out to the people of the city, pleading for his rights. "I am a traveler, oppressed," he shouted, begging the elites of Mecca to restore his dignity and return his daughter to him. And this brilliantly illustrates a major turning point in our narrative. The established elders? Well, they hesitated, but a group of brave, justice-minded youth, including the 20-year-old Muhammad, were moved to action. They gathered together, marched straight to the doorstep of the powerful Al-As bin Wa'il, and fearlessly demanded, "Why have you oppressed this innocent man?" Cornered by this completely unexpected united front, the corrupt leader finally admitted his crime. But he made this deeply disturbing proposition, asking for just one night with the merchant's daughter before returning her. The youth, of course, vehemently rejected this disgusting condition. They successfully rescued the young woman and returned her safely to her father, proving early on the uncompromising moral compass that would go on to define the Prophet's life.
Section 3. The call and opposition.
Let's move the timeline forward 2 decades. At the age of 40, the historical accounts detail the beginning of his prophethood, and instantly the whole dynamic shifts. The man who is universally respected suddenly becomes the community's most persecuted target. The sources lay out a clear timeline of his mission in Mecca. It starts with 3 years of secret preaching to his closest confidants, then shifts into a grueling 10-year period of public preaching, and eventually culminates in the hijra, or migration, to the city of Yathrib. During this public phase, the respect he once enjoyed just completely evaporated. The elites, feeling threatened by his message of equality and monotheism, launched a massive smear campaign. They started branding him with slurs like magician and soothsayer.
But the opposition wasn't just verbal, it became violently physical. Historical witnesses recount seeing him at the Dhul Majaz market, dressed in a red garment, simply calling people to his message. Following right behind him was his own uncle Abu Lahab, violently throwing stones at him until the Prophet's shins were literally left bleeding. Another powerful adversary, Abu Jahl, would publicly throw dirt on him, attempting to completely humiliate him while he preached.
The sources detail even more distressing events. On one occasion, while the Prophet was praying near the Kaaba, a particularly cruel member of the elite named Uqba bin Abi Mu'ad brought the heavy, bloodied intestines of a slaughtered camel and placed them directly onto the Prophet's back while he was in prostration. The elites just stood by laughing uproariously, pinning him to the ground under the weight until his young daughter Fatima had to rush over to remove the filth from her father. Eventually, the physical danger escalated to lethal levels. The texts describe a moment where that exact same man, Uqba, twisted a heavy cloth around the Prophet's neck, violently choking him in an attempt to end his life. It was his closest companion, Abu Bakr, who rushed in, physically pushing the attacker away and crying out with immense emotion, "Will you kill a man simply for saying Allah is my Lord?"
Section 4. The Incident of Magic.
Let's move to the next part and see how this builds, because beyond the physical violence, the traditional accounts introduce a truly bizarre spiritual attack. The prophet began suffering from an unexplained ailment that caused severe memory lapses regarding his daily actions. The texts describe how the cure was actually revealed through a profound dream. In this angelic revelation, two angels appeared. First, they diagnosed the ailment as magic. Second, they named the specific culprit, a man named Lubid bin Assam. Third, they revealed the exact method used, a comb, hair, and a string tied with knots. And finally, they gave him the precise location where this object was hidden, which was a specific well. Following the details of the stream, the prophet and his companions went directly to the location. The source describes the well's water as having turned a sickly yellow. And exactly as the angels had described, they recovered the hidden items, the comb and the knotted hair, right from the depths of the well. The texts state that finding and dismantling these exact items broke the spell, instantly curing his mysterious ailment.
Section 5. The Poisoned Gift.
So, the trials were far from over. Moving forward in the timeline to the aftermath of the Khyber conquest, the sources detail a highly calculated, lethal plot orchestrated by a woman named Zainab bint al-Harith. This was a meticulously planned assassination attempt. Zainab had quietly asked around to investigate the prophet's preferences, learning that his absolute favorite cut of meat was the shoulder of a sheep. So she prepared a roasted sheep as a supposed gift of goodwill, but she heavily laced the shoulder portion with a deadly poison before presenting it to him in his tank.
Now, what's really interesting here is the supernatural element the sources report next. The prophet accepted the gift and took a bite of the shoulder, but immediately he spat the meat out and commanded his companions to stop eating. He stated, "This bone tells me that it is poisoned," explaining that the meat itself had miraculously informed him of the lethal trap.
Tragically, that warning came too late for his companion, Bishr bin al-Bara, who had already swallowed a piece and died shortly after. As for the prophet, the sources tell us that while he survived the immediate attempt, he felt the painful, lingering internal effects of this specific poison for exactly 3 years, right up until the very end of his life.
When confronted, Zainab offered this chillingly logical justification for her assassination attempt. She told him, "If you are truly a prophet, the poison won't harm you. But if you are merely a king, we will be rid of you." Despite the lethal nature of the plot and the fact that he would suffer its physical consequences for years, the texts note an incredible response. The prophet chose to exercise absolute forgiveness. He let her go without any personal retaliation.
Section 6. A Lasting Legacy.
So the crucial point is this. Looking at the macro-level impact, we really have to view these trials as a crucible. Despite enduring relentless physical violence, public humiliation, bizarre magical attacks, and even a lethal poisoning, the sources agree that his mission was ultimately successful. He effectively dismantled the era of ignorance. He replaced systemic cruelty with principles of equality, established robust social justice where none existed, united endlessly warring tribal factions into a singular brotherhood, and laid out a complete, enduring system of life. Which leaves us with a really profound thought to consider based on the historical accounts we've explored today. Just look at the sheer scale of this transformation. How does a single figure, enduring such extreme levels of magic, poison, and relentless physical violence, manage to fundamentally and permanently rewrite the moral code of an entire civilization? It's a massive question, and one that history continues to ponder. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.